In Revenge of the Sith, Anakin Skywalker's fall to the dark side is complete when he becomes Darth Vader. As the Republic crumbles, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Padme Amidala attempt to bring Anakin back from the brink. Obi-Wan secretly boards Padme's ship to Mustafar, where a fateful confrontation ensues. Their duel leaves Anakin gravely injured, setting the stage for his transformation into the iconic Sith Lord. But what if no one went to Mustafar? What if Anakin was left alone with his decisions and his new allegiance? In the original timeline, Obi-Wan informs Padme of Anakin's fall to the dark side, prompting her desperate journey to Mustafar. However, in this altered timeline, Padme believes Obi-Wan's revelations but is so heartbroken by Anakin's betrayal and the chaos engulfing the galaxy that she chooses a different path. Overwhelmed and devastated, she decides to leave everything behind and disappear, seeking refuge from the turmoil and heartbreak. Meanwhile, alone on Mustafar, Anakin Skywalker stands amidst the burning lava rivers, the weight of his actions crashing down on him. The fiery landscape mirrors the turmoil within his heart as he reflects on the irreversible path he has chosen. Tears stream down his face as he grapples with the loss of everything he once held dear. Regret and sorrow consume him, but he knows it's too late to turn back. As he stands there, broken and alone, the unmistakable sound of a ship's engines cuts through the air. Palpatine's shuttle descends onto the landing platform, signaling that the next chapter in his dark journey is about to begin.
Master, the Separatist leaders have been eliminated.
Good Lord Vader. What we have accomplished together in such a short time is nothing short of extraordinary.
I have only done what was necessary, my lord. For peace, for order.
Indeed. But peace and order are only the beginning. You are destined for far greater things, my young apprentice. There is still much for you to learn. Do you feel the power of the dark side coursing through you?
Yes, it gives me clarity, strength.
Good. Then it is time for your next lesson. Give me your weapon. This is a weapon of a Jedi. A replacement is needed.
My lord?
This crystal, your crystal, is still bound to the light. It is a weakness, a tether to the Jedi you once were. To truly become Sith, you must dominate it, bend it to your will.
How can I accomplish this, Master?
You must pour your anger, your hatred, your pain into the crystal. You must make it suffer as you have suffered. You must make it bleed. Only then will it take on its true color, the color of power. Close your eyes. Focus on the betrayals, the losses, the rage. Let them fuel you. Make the crystal feel your wrath.
Palpatine stood at the edge of the chamber, cloaked in shadows, his yellow eyes gleaming with anticipation. He watched his apprentice with a mixture of fascination and satisfaction, his hands clasped behind his back. Anakin closed his eyes, reaching deep within himself. The Force swirled around him, dark and suffocating, like a storm ready to break. He began to pull on his memories, each one a jagged piece of pain, fueling the anger coursing through his veins. First came the image of his mother, Shmi. Her face was sunken, her body broken, as she lay dying in his arms. He could still hear her weak voice whispering his name, feel the coldness of her hand as life left her. Rage flared in his chest like a wildfire. He had been too late, too weak to save her. Then, the Jedi Council, their arrogance, their betrayal, how they refused to trust him, even after all he had done for them. He remembered Mace Windu's scornful glare, the disdain in Yoda's words, and the suffocating hypocrisy of their so-called peace. As these memories coursed through him, Anakin gritted his teeth, his fists clenching so tightly around the crystal that it began to vibrate as if struggling against him. He directed all of his anguish and hatred into the crystal, pouring every ounce of darkness within him into the tiny shard. The Kyber screamed, not audibly, but in the Force. It writhed in his grasp, its once pure essence fighting back against the corruption being forced upon it. Anakin could feel it resisting, feel its pain as if it were alive. The connection between them was excruciating, a battle of wills. Palpatine's grin widened as he felt the shift in the room. The power radiating from Anakin was growing, expanding with every passing moment. It was raw, untamed, and terrifyingly vast. The crystal's cries of pain echoed through the Force, a cacophony of agony and submission.
Good. my apprentice.
Palpatine hissed, his voice low and serpentine.
Let it suffer. Show it the depths of your power. Bend it to your will.
Anakin's body trembled as he focused harder, the room growing colder and darker with every second. The memories became sharper, more vivid, cutting through him like shards of glass. He thought of the younglings in the temple, the way their innocent eyes stared up at him before he ignited his blade. He hated himself for it, and yet that hatred only fed the darkness within him. The crystal's glow intensified, shifting from a faint red to a deep, malevolent crimson. It pulsed in his hand, each beat synchronized with his own heart. Anakin could feel it breaking, shattering under the weight of his will. Its resistance faltered, and then finally, it gave in. A surge of power exploded outward, rippling through the Force. Palpatine staggered slightly, his grin faltering for a moment as the magnitude of Anakin's strength struck him. It was unlike anything he had ever felt, a power that seemed limitless, uncontainable. Anakin opened his eyes, now glowing faintly yellow, and stared at the crystal. It was no longer pure, no longer resisting. It was his, completely dominated and corrupted. He felt a rush of triumph, a dark satisfaction in what he had done. Anakin's hands moved with precision and purpose, the pieces of his lightsaber scattered before him on the cold metal floor. The faint glow of the crimson crystal pulsed rhythmically, as though it had become a living extension of his will. His focus was razor sharp, the Force guiding his every movement. In mere moments, the once broken weapon was whole again, its sleek black and silver hilt now exuding an ominous presence. Palpatine stood nearby, watching with a mixture of pride and caution. The air was thick with tension, and the dark side of the Force swirled around Anakin like a storm, crackling with raw, untamed energy. Without hesitation, Anakin rose to his feet and ignited the saber. A hiss filled the room, and the crimson blade sprang to life, casting an eerie red glow across his face. The power in the blade was palpable, a weapon born of hatred and forged in pain. Anakin stared at it, his eyes reflecting the fiery red light, a small smirk curling at the corner of his lips. Palpatine clapped his hands together softly, stepping forward, his tone dripping with satisfaction.
Magnificent, my apprentice. A true weapon of the Sith. It is a symbol of your transformation and your destiny.
Anakin turned the blade slightly, studying its glow, feeling its hum reverberate through his hand. The weapon felt different now, more than just a tool. It was an extension of his very essence, his power made manifest. He took a step toward Palpatine, lowering the blade, but keeping his grip firm.
You have taught me much,
Anakin said, his voice low and calm, though laced with an undertone of menace. Palpatine's smile widened, but before he could respond, the unthinkable happened. In a single, fluid motion, Anakin became a blur of movement. Faster than thought, faster than even the sharpest senses of the strongest Sith Lord, he lunged forward. The speed of his attack was staggering, like a lightning bolt unleashed, a force of nature impossible to predict or counter. The crimson blade pierced through Palpatine's chest with a crackling hiss. His eyes widened in shock, his mouth opening in a gasp of disbelief. For the first time in decades, the Dark Lord of the Sith had been caught off guard, completely, utterly blindsided. Anakin stood inches from him, his face devoid of emotion, his eyes burning with a terrifying intensity. The red glow of his lightsaber illuminated Palpatine's twisted features as the Sith Lord struggled to speak, his voice a rasping whisper.
Anakin, you
underestimated me. You thought you could control me. But I am more than your apprentice.
Palpatine's knees buckled as the strength drained from his body. The power of the dark side, which had sustained him for so long, seemed to evaporate as if fleeing from the overwhelming presence of Anakin. His hands trembled, reaching feebly toward his killer. Anakin twisted the blade, his expression unchanging, and Palpatine let out a final guttural cry before collapsing to the ground. The hiss of the lightsaber ceased as Anakin deactivated the weapon, leaving the room bathed in heavy silence. For a moment, Anakin stood still, the weight of what he had done sinking in. But instead of guilt, there was only a growing sense of power, a limitless, uncontainable strength coursing through him. He had surpassed his master. He had proven that no one, not even the great Darth Sidious, could stand against him. Anakin's starship pierced through Coruscant's atmosphere, a solitary predator returning to its den. The sprawling city planet was alight with activity, but to Anakin, it was a hollow blur. His focus was singular, Padme. He stormed through the halls of their apartment, the air thick with anticipation and impatience. But she was gone. The rooms were empty, her presence erased as if she had never been there. He reached out with the Force, searching desperately for her familiar warmth, her comforting light, but found only an echoing void. A faint trace of her lingered, but it led nowhere. Anger surged within him. His fists clenched, and the furniture around him crumbled under the sheer weight of his frustration. Padme was gone, and he had no idea where or why, but his determination only hardened. She would see what he had become. She would understand his power. Days later, the Galactic Senate chamber was filled with hushed whispers and nervous tension as senators gathered under Anakin's summons. They had heard rumors, frightening whispers of Palpatine's death and Anakin's rise to power, but nothing could prepare them for what was about to unfold. The room fell silent as Anakin entered, his presence suffocating. He stood at the base of the Senate rotunda, his piercing yellow eyes scanning the rows of pods. Then, without warning, he extended a hand. The pods shuddered violently, ripped free from their mechanisms by an invisible force. The senators screamed as Anakin raised the pods high into the air and, with a crushing gesture, ignited them in flames. Fire and smoke filled the chamber as the pods disintegrated, their remains scattering like ash. Amid the chaos, Anakin began to rise. The force carried him upward, his dark cloak billowing around him as he levitated toward the central pod. He landed gracefully, the glowing crimson blade of his lightsaber igniting for all to see.
I am the Emperor of this empire.
His voice boomed, amplified by the Force itself.
The days of weakness and corruption are over. This galaxy will know order. My order.
He paused, letting the tension hang heavy in the air.
Those who oppose me will face the might of my army. The clones are loyal to me and me alone. You will comply, or you will be replaced.
The senators cowered, nodding in fearful submission. None dared to challenge him, knowing that resistance would be met with swift and merciless retribution. Satisfied, Anakin deactivated his blade and descended, leaving the Senate in stunned silence. The galaxy had a new ruler, one who wielded power unlike any they had ever seen. As the weeks turned into years, Anakin focused his wrath on eliminating the remnants of the Jedi Order. Order 66 continued unabated, with Anakin personally leading missions to hunt down survivors. Jedi temples across the galaxy were destroyed, their archives burned, their sanctuaries desecrated. Anakin's mastery of the dark side grew with every confrontation, his strength becoming a storm of rage and precision. No Jedi, no matter how skilled or hidden, could escape him. He became a phantom, striking without warning, leaving no survivors. The galaxy trembled under his relentless pursuit, and the Jedi Order became a shadow of its former self. Meanwhile, far from Coruscant, Padme had found sanctuary on a distant, uncharted world. Her children, Luke and Leia, had been born in secret. She had fled with the help of Bail Organa, evading Anakin's reach. Now she resided in a hidden enclave alongside Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda. The twins were special, their connection to the Force undeniable. Obi-Wan and Yoda began training them from a young age, instilling in them the teachings of the Jedi. Luke was fierce and determined, his spirit echoing that of his father. Leia, on the other hand, possessed a calm wisdom beyond her years, a natural leader in the making. Padme watched from the sidelines, her heart torn. She loved Anakin still, despite everything, but she knew that the man she had once known was gone. Her children represented hope, the hope of a future where the Jedi would rise again and bring balance to the galaxy.
Father, can you hear me? I know you are out there. Please, Father.
Luke! Luke! Where are you?
Mother, she misses you. And I...
Luke! There you are. Mother and Master Kenobi have been looking for you.
Tell them I will be right there.
Luke, what's the matter with you?
Do you ever think about him?
Think about who?
Our father, Leia.
No, not at all. He's a monster, Luke, who left us behind.
Father, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
The galaxy had endured 16 years under the iron rule of Emperor Anakin Skywalker. Unlike Palpatine, whose reign was marked by manipulation and fear alone, Anakin sought something greater. He envisioned an empire of order, efficiency, and peace, a galaxy free from the corruption that had plagued the Republic. But his methods were rooted in the dark side, and the path he chose to achieve his vision only deepened the shadows that consumed him. Anakin ruled with an unyielding hand, eliminating dissent with precision. He rebuilt infrastructure, reduced crime with an oppressive police state, and ensured that trade routes flourished under Imperial control. To many, he was a savior, a leader who brought stability to a galaxy ravaged by war. But beneath the surface, his empire bred resentment. Planets chafed under the weight of his control, and the dark side seeped into every corner of his rule, warping his intentions. Anakin's obsession with eradicating the Jedi continued to consume him. The Purge had claimed nearly all, but one problem remained. Ahsoka Tano, his former apprentice, thought to have been eliminated during the Clone Wars, had emerged as the leader of an underground Jedi haven. Over the years, she had become a symbol of resistance, keeping hope alive for the remnants of the Jedi Order. Ahsoka and Anakin's encounters over the years were fraught with heartbreak and intensity. Whenever their paths crossed, Ahsoka pleaded with him, trying desperately to remind him of the man he once was. She spoke of the hero, the brother, and the friend she had once known, but each time Anakin dismissed her words, his resolve hardened by the dark side. "You don't understand, Ahsoka," he would say, his voice cold yet tinged with a flicker of something deeper. "The galaxy needs this. The Jedi are the ones who betrayed me. They betrayed us." Ahsoka, undeterred, would fight to protect those she sheltered, barely escaping his wrath. Anakin, for all his power, could never bring himself to destroy her completely, yet he continued to hunt her, driven by the belief that if he could eliminate her, the Jedi's hope would finally be extinguished. Amid his relentless pursuit of Ahsoka, Anakin never stopped searching for Padme. He clung to the belief that she was alive, somewhere out there. Despite his anger and his descent into the dark side, a part of him still yearned for her. He sent spies, probes, and bounty hunters across the galaxy, combing every sector for any sign of her, but the trail always went cold. In his private moments, he would stand on the balcony of the Imperial Palace, gazing at the stars. His connection to the Force told him she was alive, but the uncertainty gnawed at him. She was the only piece of his past that he couldn't let go, the one thing that could still stir the man he used to be. Meanwhile, far from the Empire's grasp, Luke and Leia grew into young warriors under the guidance of Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda. Hidden on a remote world, they trained in secret, their abilities growing with each passing year. Luke, bold and determined, often clashed with Obi-Wan's cautious teachings, while Leia's quiet strength and sharp intellect reminded everyone of Padme. Together, they embodied the hope of the Jedi's return. Yoda, though aged and frail, provided wisdom and insight, guiding the twins with stories of the Jedi's past. But as the years passed, the toll of time caught up with the ancient Jedi Master. In the 16th year of their exile, Yoda passed peacefully, becoming one with the Force. His death left a void, but it also galvanized Luke and Leia. They knew their training had to continue, not just for themselves, but for the galaxy. The Empire was no longer the unbreakable machine it had been in the early days of Anakin's rule. Whispers of discontent had begun to echo through the ranks of high-ranking Imperial officers, their confidence in their Emperor waning. The Jedi, thought to be all but extinct, were rallying under Ahsoka Tano, their resistance more organized and emboldened than ever. Every skirmish seemed to expose cracks in the Empire's control, and the officers attributed this growing rebellion to Anakin's divided focus. Instead of channeling all of the Empire's might toward crushing the Jedi, he continued to pour resources into his personal obsession, finding Padme Amidala. To the officers, it was madness, a fruitless endeavor for a woman they believed long dead, detracting from the efficiency and power that had once defined the Empire. Quietly, alliances began to form, and in the shadows of the Imperial Palace, a clandestine meeting was convened.
This cannot continue. The Emperor's obsession with his personal vendetta is jeopardizing the very foundation of the Empire.
Resources meant for the war effort are being diverted to chase the ghost of his wife. The Jedi, those we were assured were eradicated, are stronger than ever.
Stronger because he lets them be. Every encounter with this, Ahsoka Tano ends in her escape. He pursues her as if she's a prize to be won.
And all the while, rebellion festers. Planets that once trembled at the Empire's might now defy us. They see his failure. They see his weakness.
If we act, we must act swiftly and with precision. The Emperor is powerful beyond measure. One misstep and we'll be swept away like insects under his wrath.
which is why we must strike from within his empire. His trust in the military remains absolute. It's his greatest vulnerability.
We're agreed then. We begin our movements quietly, reassignments, miscommunications.
Then we crush them as we should have years ago. Without his distractions, the empire can be what it was always meant to be, unstoppable.
Despite Ahsoka Tano's relentless determination and the underground haven she had built for the surviving Jedi, the Empire's reach was vast. Anakin, ever the tactician, had planted a spy within her ranks, a shadow lurking among the light. This agent, a former Padawan who had barely escaped the initial purge, pretended to share Ahsoka's vision while feeding critical information back to the Emperor. Through this spy, Anakin had tracked Ahsoka's movements across the galaxy. Her evasion skills and the Force's guidance had kept her safe, but the spy's reports painted a clearer picture of her network and alliances. Now, at last, the Emperor knew her next destination, a remote, hidden planet. Ahsoka's rebellion would finally be within his grasp. Ahsoka stood on the bridge of her small starship, staring out at the hyperspace tunnel ahead. The Force had been calling to her, a steady pulse guiding her every decision. It was unlike anything she had experienced before. The whispers were strong, insistent, pulling her toward a destination she did not yet fully understand. The planet appeared barren in the star charts, a world lost to time, but the Force told her otherwise. It was a place of convergence where light and dark would collide. She felt it in her bones, the urgency pressing her forward. "Are you sure about this?" asked one of her trusted Jedi allies, standing beside her. Ahsoka nodded, her voice steady. "The Force is guiding us. We must trust it. There's something or someone waiting for us there." What Ahsoka could not know was that this planet was more than a waypoint in her journey. It was a haven hidden deep within the galaxy where Padme Amidala, Luke, Leia, and Obi-Wan Kenobi had made their home. A small group had been careful, ensuring their presence remained undetected, but the Force worked in mysterious ways. As Ahsoka's ship approached the planet, her presence resonated with those already there. Obi-Wan felt the tremor immediately, stepping out of the makeshift temple they had built to gaze at the sky. "She's here," he murmured, his voice tinged with both hope and apprehension. Luke and Leia exchanged glances, sensing the arrival as well. Padme stood nearby, her expression one of quiet determination. She knew the risks, but she also knew that Ahsoka's arrival could only mean one thing. The war was coming to them. Anakin, unaware of the full significance of the planet, believed Ahsoka's rebellion to be vulnerable there. His obsession with eradicating the Jedi had blinded him to the possibility of Padme and his children's presence. To him, this was merely another step in finishing what he had started with Order 66. The spies' reports had been clear. Ahsoka's forces were gathering. Anakin prepared his fleet, ready to deliver a decisive blow. As his forces approached the planet, he felt a strange disturbance in the Force. It was faint, elusive, but it tugged at him like a distant memory. He dismissed it as nothing more than his anticipation of finally ending Ahsoka's defiance. Little did he know, the Force was guiding all the players to this moment. The paths of light and dark were converging, and the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath, waiting for what would come next. The Force trembled with warning, a dark presence descending upon the hidden sanctuary. Obi-Wan Kenobi stood in the doorway of the makeshift temple, his gaze fixed on the horizon where the faint hum of an approaching starship broke the planet's quiet. The air grew heavy, suffused with an unmistakable energy. Anakin was coming. Obi-Wan turned back toward the others, his face grim. Inside, Padme cradled a datapad while Luke and Leia sparred under the watchful eye of their mother. The twins, now nearly grown, moved with precision and determination, their training honed by years of careful instruction. Padme looked up, sensing Obi-Wan's urgency before he spoke. He approached quickly, his steps purposeful. With no time for hesitation, Obi-Wan placed a firm hand on Ahsoka's shoulder and spoke softly but with conviction. Ahsoka, though reluctant, understood the weight of his words. Her role now was not to fight, but to protect. Without hesitation, Padme motioned for Luke and Leia to follow her. The twins hesitated briefly, their youthful defiance shining through, but Ahsoka stepped between them and Obi-Wan, her expression leaving no room for argument. She assured them they needed to go, and her calm strength eased their protests. As she led Padme and the twins toward the hidden escape route through the woods, she cast a final glance back at Obi-Wan, who gave her a brief nod. The sounds of their retreat faded into the distance, leaving Obi-Wan alone in the growing tension of the sanctuary. He turned back toward the horizon, horizon, the ominous silhouette of Anakin's starship now fully visible. Steam hissed as the ramp descended, and the oppressive hum of the dark side filled the air. Anakin emerged, his black cloak flowing behind him, his steps deliberate and measured. The crimson hilt of his lightsaber hung at his side, unlit but radiating menace. Obi-Wan took a deep breath, the weight of their shared history pressing down on him. This was not just a battle, it was the culmination of everything they had been, everything they had lost. Anakin stopped a few paces away, the two men now standing face to face. The silence between them was deafening, the tension palpable. The Force swirled violently around them, a storm of light and dark colliding in stillness. Obi-Wan squared his shoulders, his hand brushing against the hilt of his saber. Anakin stood motionless, his piercing eyes locked on the man he had once called brother. The galaxy seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the inevitable clash that would forever alter its fate.
Anakin, is it truly you?
That name no longer has meaning. You stand before the Emperor now.
The Emperor? No. You're Anakin Skywalker, my brother, my friend. What has the dark side done to you?
The dark side has freed me. It gave me power. Power the Jedi never allowed me to embrace. You were blind, Obi-Wan, all of you.
You betrayed yourself. You let your fear, your anger consume you. I've failed you, but you still have a choice. Let go of this madness.
The light is a lie, Obi-Wan. It binds, it weakens, it blinds you to the truth. The Jedi wanted control, not peace.
If that's what you truly believe, then the man I knew is gone. You've become everything you once swore to destroy.
I became what was necessary. This galaxy needed order, and I gave it to them. You can't stop me, Obi-Wan.
I must try. I won't let you destroy what little hope remains. If you've come here for the Jedi, then you will find nothing but your own end.
Then you will die with them.
The clearing erupts in a blinding clash of light as blue meets red. Obi-Wan moves with precision, every step a calculated defense, but Anakin is relentless, a storm of rage and raw power. His crimson blade strikes with the fury of a predator closing in on its prey, forcing Obi-Wan backward with every blow. Obi-Wan's mind churns as the duel unfolds. He recalls the man Anakin once was, the warrior who had stood beside him in countless battles. But this is not the Anakin he remembers. The dark side has transformed him, giving him strength and speed that Obi-Wan can no longer match. Every strike feels heavier, every movement faster, as though Anakin's sheer presence is pressing the life out of him. Their sabers collide in bursts of energy, the hum and crackle echoing through the clearing. Obi-Wan fights to maintain his footing, but Anakin's attacks are unrelenting, each swing driving him closer to the edge. The Force pulses around them, and Obi-Wan feels the overwhelming weight of Anakin's power. He knows he is outmatched. His strikes are met with ease, his counters evaded with precision. Sweat beads on his forehead as his movements grow slower, more labored. Anakin, in contrast, moves with terrifying ease, each motion a demonstration of dominance. Obi-Wan's focus shifts to the others, Padme, Luke, Leia, and Ahsoka. In his mind's eye, he sees them fleeing, disappearing into the safety of the woods. His heart beats in rhythm with their footsteps, and every parry, every dodge is a desperate effort to buy them more time. Anakin presses forward, forcing Obi-Wan to his limits. A powerful swing nearly cleaves through Obi-Wan's defenses, forcing him to leap back. His feet slide across the dirt as he regains his stance, but Anakin is already upon him. A well-timed strike sends Obi-Wan stumbling, his saber nearly slipping from his grasp. Obi-Wan feels the inevitability of the moment. He knows he cannot win. Anakin's strength is overwhelming, his connection to the dark side a tidal wave that Obi-Wan cannot hope to stop. Yet he holds on, his every movement fueled by the thought of those he is protecting. Every second he survives is another second they can escape. Anakin's attacks grow more vicious, his strikes carving deep furrows into the earth. Obi-Wan struggles to block a series of devastating blows, but his strength begins to falter. Finally, Anakin delivers a crushing kick to Obi-Wan's chest, sending him sprawling to the ground. His lightsaber is knocked from his hand, skittering away across the dirt. Obi-Wan falls to one knee, defenseless, his chest heaving as he struggles to rise. Anakin towers over him, his crimson blade raised high, the glow bathing Obi-Wan's face in an eerie red light. The strike comes swift and unrelenting, but just before it lands, a brilliant green blade intercepts it. The impact sends sparks flying, the clash of sabers ringing out like a thunderclap. Anakin pulls back, his head snapping to the side as he locks eyes with the new arrival. Standing between them is Luke Skywalker. The young man's green blade hums defiantly, his stance firm despite the fear rippling through him. The tension in the clearing shifts. The battle momentarily halted as father and son face one another for the first time. The air grew still as Anakin stood frozen, his crimson blade lowered slightly, his burning yellow eyes locked onto the young man before him, whose green saber hummed defiantly. But it wasn't just the sight of him, it was the feeling. The force resonated between them, deep and undeniable, like an ancient bond being reignited. Anakin didn't need an explanation. He didn't need words. The truth hit him like a tidal wave. This was his son, his flesh and blood. For a moment, the dark side that had consumed him for years seemed to falter, the shadows giving way to a faint, blinding light. His gaze lingered on Luke's face, taking in every detail. The determination in his eyes mirrored his own once unshakable resolve as a Jedi. But it was more than that. There was Padme in him too, in the way he stood tall despite the fear, in the quiet strength of his expression. The combination struck Anakin like a blade to the heart, stirring emotions he thought long buried. The darkness within him wavered, struggling against the flickering light. He felt guilt, overwhelming and suffocating for what he had done, for what he had become. Yet there was also something else, a faint hope. It was a feeling he hadn't allowed himself to experience in years. Luke stood firm, not speaking, but his presence alone spoke volumes. Anakin felt his son's courage, his compassion, and his unyielding connection to the light. For a fleeting moment, Anakin saw himself as he once was, before the fear, before the anger. He saw the man Padme believed in, the man he had betrayed. The moment was shattered by the distant rumble of engines. Above them, star destroyers pierced through the clouds, their shadows looming over the battlefield. Anakin's attention snapped upward, and through the Force, he sensed the treachery of his officers. The betrayal was as sharp as any blade, but the threat was immediate. Turbo laser fire rained down, explosions tearing through the clearing and the surrounding forest. Without hesitation, Anakin reached out with the Force, summoning a barrier of energy around himself, Luke, and Obi-Wan. The shield shimmered, a translucent bubble holding back the fiery devastation. The ground trembled beneath the bombardment, but Anakin stood firm, his hands outstretched, pouring all his strength into protecting them. The strain was immense. The Force rippled through him like a storm, threatening to break him apart. Years of dark side corruption had taken their toll, and he felt his body faltering under the effort. His breath came in ragged gasps, sweat dripping from his brow as the shield flickered and strained against the relentless assault. Luke and Obi-Wan hesitated, watching in stunned silence as Anakin held the shield. But through the Force, Anakin urged them to move. He could feel their confusion, their reluctance, but he pushed harder, willing them to leave. Luke stepped forward, but Obi-Wan placed a firm hand on his shoulder, pulling him back. Together, they turned and ran toward the forest, the roar of the bombardment fading as they disappeared into the shadows. Alone now, Anakin's focus wavered. The light that had flickered within him surged stronger, eclipsing the darkness that had defined him for so long. He thought of Luke, of Padme, of the life he had lost. He thought of the man he had been and the man he could have been. The shield flickered again, cracks forming in the translucent energy as the strain became too much. Anakin let out a shuddering breath, closing his eyes as he released his grip on the Force. The shield collapsed, and the bombardment surged forward, consuming the clearing in a wave of fire and destruction. For the first time in years, Anakin felt peace. The light within him burned brightly as he became one with the Force, his final act not one of destruction, but of sacrifice. The dark side was gone, and in its place was the man he had once been, the man who loved, who hoped, who believed. As the dust settled, the clearing was silent, the echoes of Anakin's final stand reverberating through the Force. Somewhere far away, Luke felt it, a surge of warmth and sadness that told him what his father had done. Anakin Skywalker was gone, but in his final moments, he had found redemption.